I used to think overprotective moms were dramatic. Then my mother-in-law kidnapped my baby and turned off her phone. It all started last Saturday. My husband Jake had a minor surgery scheduled, nothing life-threatening, just something that needed my full attention while he recovered. We agreed it made sense to ask his mother, Carla, to watch our 7-month-old daughter, Rosie, for a few hours. Carla had been begging to spend more time with the baby anyway. What could go wrong? Carla showed up at our door right on time, all smiles and perfume, dressed like she was going out to brunch instead of babysitting. I handed over Rosie with a diaper bag and a bottle, gave a quick rundown of feeding times and said, "We'll be back by 3. Just call if you need anything." Carla waved me off with a cheery, "You kids take your time, Nana's got this." Except Nana did not have this. By 2:45 I started texting Carla just to check in. No response. By 3:15 I was calling. Voicemail. I tried again. And again. Then Jake started calling too, even though he could barely sit up from the anesthesia. Nothing. At first I told myself she'd probably taken Rosie for a walk and didn't hear the phone. But by 4:30 I was full-on panicking. I called every place she liked to go, her house, her yoga studio, even her favorite coffee shop. Nothing. At 5:22 p.m. I finally got a text. Not a call. Not even a real explanation. Just a photo. It was Rosie strapped in her car seat, the background unmistakably a gas station off the interstate. The caption said, "Road trip with Nana. Be home tonight, red heart, red heart, red heart." I lost it. I called and called again. Still no answer. I was shaking so badly I dropped the phone. Jake, barely coherent, asked what happened and I couldn't even speak. I just showed him the photo. His face went pale. He knew exactly where they were. "See, Carla has this friend in a little town 3 hours away, Karen. Someone she's been dying to show Rosie off to. Apparently today was that day. Who decides to take a literal baby on a 3-hour road trip without asking the parents?" By the time I got Carla on the phone, nearly 2 hours later, she sounded completely calm. "Oh honey, you worry too much. Rosie's having so much fun. We'll be back by bedtime. No biggie." No biggie? I told her to turn around immediately. She laughed, then said, "Well, we've already stopped for dinner, might as well finish the visit." At that point, I couldn't tell if I wanted to scream or cry or both. I drove the 3 hours myself to pick up Rosie. Jake wanted to come but could barely stand. When I got to Karen's place, Carla acted like I was being the dramatic one. "She's safe. Why are you acting like I threw her in a ditch?" Karen, for her part, looked horrified. "You mean you didn't tell her you were bringing the baby here?" she asked Carla, visibly backing away like she wanted no part in this. I didn't even respond. I just took Rosie, strapped her in my car, and drove home. My hands didn't stop shaking the whole way. And here's the kicker. Carla told Jake afterward that I overreacted and that I shouldn't be so controlling. Controlling? This woman took my child across state lines without permission, didn't answer her phone for hours, and then had the gall to call me controlling? And now the family is divided. Jake is furious with his mom, but his sister Samantha has chimed in, saying I'm making it into a bigger deal than it is. Samantha has no kids. Jake wants to go no contact for a while. Carla's been blowing up my phone with guilt-tripping texts. "You're keeping me from my granddaughter. I'm just trying to be a good grandma. You're alienating the family." I haven't responded. But every time I hold Rosie now, I think, what if something had happened? What if they got in a car accident? What if Rosie had a medical emergency and Carla didn't know what to do? I trusted her with 2 hours. She gave herself an entire day. And she never even said sorry. Now I'm questioning if I can ever trust her again. ATA for not wanting my ML around my baby anymore? I spent the entire night staring at the baby monitor, watching Rosie sleep like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, my brain kept replaying everything: Carla's smug voice, the clueless expression on Karen's face, the way Rosie's little head bobbled in that photo like she had no idea her whole world had been hijacked for a joyride. The next morning, I opened my phone to 14 texts from Carla. The first was, "Good morning. Just checking in, can I stop by later with some baby clothes I found on the trip?" The next few were increasingly manipulative. "I really feel hurt by how you treated me. You know I would never hurt Rosie. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Jake is being brainwashed by your anxiety." And finally, If you're going to punish me for loving my granddaughter, maybe I'm not welcome in her life anymore. That last one stuck. Not because I believed it, but because it sounded like a threat. And more importantly, it told me exactly how she saw this situation. She was the victim. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my therapist. Yes, I have one. I started therapy after postpartum anxiety hit me like a truck. I'd had panic attacks about the baby rolling over in her sleep, or choking on formula, or falling off the changing table. Some of it was irrational. Some of it wasn't. Dr. Levin answered with her usual calm voice. I hadn't talked to her in weeks. I think my mother-in-law kidnapped my baby, I said. There was a pause. Then she said, why don't you walk me through what happened? I did. Every detail. When I was done, Dr. Levin said something that changed how I saw everything. She didn't just ignore your instructions. She removed your child from your care without consent, avoided communication, and then downplayed it when confronted. That's a violation of maternal boundaries and safety. I felt seen. Finally, someone who got it. Dr. Levin went further. This isn't about overreacting. This is about consent, control, and disrespect. The next steps need to be about safety, emotional and physical, for both you and your child. That was the moment I realized I needed a boundary. A hard one. So I wrote Carla an email. Not a text. Not a call. An email so there would be no chance of misunderstanding. Subject line: regarding Rosie and future visits. Carla, I need to be very clear about what happened last weekend. You took Rosie without permission on a road trip, refused to answer your phone for hours, and ignored my repeated requests to bring her home. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a serious breach of trust and safety. Until further notice, you will not be allowed to be alone with Rosie. This is not about punishment. This is about protecting our daughter and re-establishing trust, if that is even possible. I hope you understand how serious this is. We are open to having a conversation with a neutral third party if and when you're ready to truly listen and take accountability. Maya. I sent it in brace for the fallout. Jake backed me 100%. In fact, he added his own paragraph to the email. And it was firm. But Carla didn't reply. Not that day. Not the next. Instead, the reply came from someone else. Samantha, Jake's sister. Her email started like this. I really think you're blowing this out of proportion, Maya. Mom just wanted to bond with her granddaughter, and you've made it sound like she's some kind of criminal. She continued. If you're this controlling now, what happens when Rosie starts school, or wants to go on a sleepover, or God forbid has a life outside of your anxiety? And then the dagger. Honestly, I don't think this is about Mom at all. I think this is about you needing everything your way. I sat there staring at the screen. My hands were cold. My jaw clenched. Not just because of what she said, but because I had once liked Samantha. She was the cool aunt. No kids, lots of tattoos, always brought the fun gifts. She came to the hospital when Rosie was born with a giant basket of essentials and a handwritten note that made me cry. I thought we were friends. Jake read the email and said nothing. Just stood up, walked out into the backyard and screamed. Loud. He never screams. That night, I called my sister Liana. We hadn't spoken in weeks. Not because we were fighting, but because she lived in another state and had 3 kids under 6. She understood chaos. She also didn't sugarcoat things. I told her everything. Even read her the emails. Liana didn't hesitate. Carla's dangerous. I blinked. You think so? I don't mean she's going to hurt Rosie on purpose. But people like that, they think love entitles them to override boundaries. That's emotional danger. And the worst part? They think you are the problem for trying to protect your child. She paused. Do you remember what happened with Mom? And just like that, a buried memory came flooding back. Our mom had once taken Liana's oldest, her son Max, out for ice cream. They were supposed to be gone an hour. They were gone for 7. No phone calls. No explanation. They'd ended up at a beach 2 hours away because Mom felt like a change of scenery. Liana had filed a missing person report. Mom never apologized. Said Liana needed to relax. I'd forgotten that. I went no contact for 2 years after that, Liana said. I thought I was being too harsh. But now I know it's not about punishment. It's about protection. I cried after that call. Not because I was sad, but because I didn't feel alone anymore. The next twist came 3 days later. Jake got a call at work. From Child Protective Services. Someone anonymous, of course, had reported that we were emotionally unstable parents who neglected the baby during a medical crisis. The complaint said I'd left Rosie in the care of an unqualified guardian, then abandoned the child to chase down the caregiver in a fit of rage. It didn't take a genius to guess who made the call. We had to schedule a home visit, prove we had formula, diapers, safe sleeping arrangements, that Rosie was healthy and loved, which she was. The social worker, thankfully, was kind, said the report didn't match what she saw at all. Still, the shame clung to me like a second skin. I felt exposed, violated, and furious. Jake looked ready to drive to his mother's house and scream at her. But I stopped him. Let her burn her own bridges, I said. We'll be the steady ones. We wrote a second email. Subject line, final boundary. Carla, someone has filed a false report to CPS about our family. We will not speculate on who, but the timing is suspicious and deeply upsetting. This message is to formally notify you that until further notice, we are going no contact. Any attempts to interfere with our parenting or to circumvent this boundary through third parties will be considered harassment. Please respect our decision. This is about our daughter's safety and our family's peace. Carla didn't reply, but Samantha did. Another email. This time just 3 words. You'll regret this. I don't know what she meant. I don't care. Rosie is safe. She's sleeping soundly in her crib as I write this. Her chest rises and falls, slow and sweet, like she trusts the whole world to protect her. And in this house, she's right to. So yeah, maybe I am overprotective. But if being overprotective means never again letting someone take my baby without permission, I'll take that label with pride. This isn't just about one bad decision. It's about power, control, respect, and the terrifying realization that sometimes the people who say they love you most are the ones you most need to guard against. 1 week passed. Then 2. No word from Carla. No word from Samantha. I started to wonder if the silence was the punishment. The kind of cruel, calculated punishment that people like Carla think doesn't leave a mark, but it does. I still flinched when my phone buzzed. I still hesitated before opening the door, worried she might be on the other side. All smiles and makeup, pretending like nothing ever happened. Jake was quieter now too. Less angry, more hollow. I asked him one night while brushing my teeth, "Do you miss her?" He looked up at me in the mirror and said, "I miss the idea of her. The mom I thought I had." That hit me harder than I expected. Because the truth was, I used to like Carla. When Jake and I were just dating, she welcomed me. She gave me a weird-looking casserole at Thanksgiving and told me, "You're the first girl he's brought home that didn't make him act like a weasel." I didn't know back then that her kindness came with a price, obedience. But now I knew, and I wasn't about to pay it. Then came the letter. Yes, a real letter. Handwritten. Folded in thirds. Left in our mailbox without postage, which meant Carla had been here, right in front of our house. I opened it alone, sitting on the couch while Rosie napped in her swing. It read, "Maya, I don't know what's happened to you. You used to be kind. Now you're cold. You used to smile when I held Rosie. Now you treat me like a criminal. I'm heartbroken. Did I make a mistake taking her on that trip? Maybe. But don't you see? I only wanted her to see the ocean. The way she giggled when the waves touched her toes, I wish you could have heard it. That's what love looks like. I raised 2 children. I'm not reckless. I'm experienced. You're a first-time mother clinging to fear. You don't know yet what matters and what doesn't. But you will. And when you do, I hope you'll let me back in. Carla." I read it 3 times. The first time with anger. The second with disbelief. The third with something I didn't expect. Pity. This was the letter of someone who had no idea she did anything wrong. Who believed love was enough to erase violation. Who truly thought she could spin a road trip kidnapping into a sunset memory. I was still staring at the letter when the doorbell rang. It wasn't Carla. It was my dad. Now this was a surprise. My parents are divorced. My mom lives on the East Coast. My dad, Greg, lives about an hour away but doesn't visit often. He's the kind of man who texts emojis instead of words and calls Rosie the bean. He's kind, quiet, a little awkward. He stood at the door with a 6-pack of ginger beer and a folded lawn chair. "I thought I'd sit on your porch," he said. "Unless that's weird." It wasn't. We sat together under the wide July sky, Rosie asleep in her bassinet just inside. I handed him the letter. He read it slowly, then let out a long sigh. "You know what this reminds me of?" he asked. I shook my head. "Your grandma, June. She used to say the worst kind of apology is the one that asks you to feel bad for them." I nodded. "That's exactly it." He leaned forward. "You're doing the right thing. Even if it sucks. Even if it makes you feel like the villain in someone else's story." He was quiet for a moment, then added something I'll never forget. "Parenthood rewrites your moral compass. Suddenly, it's not about being liked, it's about being safe. And sometimes those two things are at war." I wanted to cry, but instead, I just said, "Thanks for the ginger beer." He smiled. "Least I can do." That weekend, we decided to visit Jake's uncle, Mark. Mark was Carla's brother, a former firefighter, now retired and living in a cabin 2 hours north. He and Jake had always been closer than Jake was to most of his own family. Mark was the kind of man who spoke little but saw everything. We figured if anyone could give us perspective on Carla, it would be him. We arrived just before sunset. Rosie in her carrier, Jake still unsure if this was a good idea. Mark greeted us with open arms. He listened to the whole story quietly with a drink in hand. When we finished, he stood up, walked to the window, and said, "I love my sister. But Carla, she's always had a way of rewriting reality to suit her narrative." He sat back down. "You know, when our dad died, Carla told everyone she was with him in the hospital holding his hand?" I nodded. Jake looked confused. "She wasn't," Mark said. "She showed up 2 hours after he passed. But in her version, she made peace with him. That's what she needed the story to be. So she told it until she believed it." Jake rubbed his eyes. "So what do we do?" Mark sighed. "You protect your family. You don't chase her. And if she wants back in, she has to come back through the door you built. Not the one she tore off the hinges." He paused. "And don't ever let her be alone with that baby again. Not for 1 minute. She doesn't get to rewrite that story." That was when Jake made the decision we were changing the locks. It wasn't paranoia. It was precaution. Because here's the truth no one likes to admit. Most family drama isn't about drama. It's about power. Carla had power over Jake for decades. She wielded it with guilt and charm. She expected that same power to transfer to me. And when it didn't, she retaliated. First with silence. Then with sabotage. Now every move we made had to be about clarity and safety. Not vengeance. Not shame. Just peace. Still, the final test came a week later. It was a Sunday morning. Quiet. Jake was making pancakes. Rosie was in her high chair chewing on a silicone giraffe. That's when the knock came. 3 soft taps. I opened the door. It was Samantha. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were red. And in her hands was something unexpected, Carla's journal. "She's in the hospital," Samantha said, voice barely above a whisper. My stomach dropped. She had a panic attack. Drove herself to the ER thinking it was a heart attack. "She's stable now, but she told the nurse she thought she was dying because you hated her." I didn't know what to say. "She asked me to bring you this," Samantha said, holding out the journal. "She wants you to understand her." I took it, but I didn't open it. Samantha lingered. "She's still not sorry," she said. "But she's not okay either." Then with a sigh she added, "Maybe we all need help." And just like that she turned and left. The journal sat on our coffee table for 3 days before I opened it. And what I found inside? 3 days. That's how long it took before I had the courage to open Carla's journal. It sat there like a ghost, daring me to pick it up. Not because I thought I'd find apologies inside, but because I knew I wouldn't. And yet, some small irrational part of me still hoped. I waited until Rosie was down for the night. Jake sat beside me silently, holding my hand, the journal in my lap. It was a plain leather-bound notebook. No glitter. No stickers. The first page was dated April 14th, 2 weeks before Rosie was born. The first line? "I don't think Maya likes me." That was her opening sentence. Not, "I can't wait to be a grandma." Not, "I'm so excited to meet the baby." Just a declaration of conflict. Like she'd already cast herself as an outsider in a story she wasn't even supposed to be the center of. The next few pages were a strange mix of resentment, longing, and control. She wrote things like, Jake used to call me every day. Now I'm lucky if I hear from him once a week. That woman has him under a spell. I bought 3 dresses for Rosie and Maya didn't say thank you. What kind of mother doesn't want help? They act like I'm overbearing, but I know how to raise children. I raised Jake, didn't I? He turned out fine. And then one sentence that stopped me cold. If I don't step in, that baby will never know real love. I felt like I'd been punched. It was all there, the twisted logic, the belief that love justified crossing every boundary. The delusion that she was the savior in a story where we were apparently failing. I flipped ahead. Some pages were rants. Some were lists of gifts she planned to buy for Rosie. And then about halfway through I found a passage from the day she took Rosie. June 17th. Took Rosie to the coast today. Didn't tell Maya. Didn't want to hear her lecture about naps and bottles. Sometimes you have to follow your instincts. It was so peaceful, just me and Rosie and the sound of the waves. She fell asleep in my arms. Like she knew she was safe. Jake would understand if he weren't so whipped. Maya doesn't get it. She thinks motherhood is rules and checklists. But it's more than that. It's presence. Connection. Legacy. Legacy. That word stuck with me. Because now I could see. Carla wasn't trying to steal Rosie. She was trying to preserve herself. She was trying to carve her identity into our child like a name in wet cement. This wasn't just about control. It was about fear. Fear of being irrelevant. Fear of being forgotten. Fear that the new generation didn't need her. I closed the journal, my heart pounding with a cocktail of anger and pity. Jake hadn't spoken the entire time. But when I looked at him, he nodded. I don't think she's evil, he said quietly. But I do think she's broken. And that's when I finally understood the difference. There are people who hurt you because they hate you. And then there are people who hurt you because they can't stand the idea that they don't own you. Carla was the second kind. So what do you do with someone like that? Someone who violated your trust but still, somewhere deep down, believes they were loving you the whole time? You don't excuse it. But maybe you don't let it eat you alive either. We didn't respond to the journal. Not at first. Instead, we wrote one final message. Together. Not to Carla, but to ourselves. We printed it and taped it to the fridge. It read, our home, our rules, our peace. Rosie's safety is non-negotiable. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are protection. Love without respect is not love. Anyone who enters our child's life must do so with humility, not entitlement. We owe no one access to our family. And above all, we are not here to make other people comfortable at the cost of our daughter's security. Weeks passed. Rosie got her first cold. Jake taught her to high five. I started working again part-time and we hired a sitter, someone we interviewed, background checked and trusted. And then one day there was another letter in the mailbox. Not from Carla. From Samantha. It said, Maya. I read the journal too. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. I'm sorry for defending her. I still love her, she's my mom, but I see now that I was blind to how much pain she was causing. I hope one day there's room for healing. But I also know that healing can only happen with accountability. Please give Rosie a kiss from Aunt Sam. Samantha. It didn't fix everything. But it was something. A crack of light through the storm. Jake and I looked at each other, both holding the letter, and said almost in unison, maybe someday. We're not there yet. Carla's still in therapy apparently. Samantha keeps her updated on Rosie through photos and stories, but we've made it clear. No direct contact. Not until Carla can acknowledge what happened. Not until she apologizes, not for hurting our feelings, but for endangering our child. Rosie turns 1 next month. There will be cake, balloons, friends, laughter. There won't be Carla. And you know what? That's okay. Because the greatest act of motherhood I've learned isn't baking the perfect cupcakes or reading bedtime stories with funny voices. It's standing between your child and harm. Even when the harm wears a smile and says they mean well. Even when that harm shares your blood. Even when that harm thinks you're the villain for saying no. Some stories don't end with forgiveness. Some end with clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is its own kind of peace.